Good evening, Cubs fans, and I guess we were fortunate enough this spring training to have a situation to where they played both the defending American League champion and the defending world champion in back-to-back days, and that's what's happened in the past 2 days, and the Cubs have definitely went up to the task and did quite well as they beat the defending world champion Giants today by a score of 8-5. So this is something really good to see, and this is a really interesting game because you look at how just the box score laid out. The Cubs scored 1 run in each of the first 4 innings. The Giants stormed out with 5 in the 6th, which put them behind 1 run, but the Cubs were able to answer right back with 3 runs in the bottom of the 6th, add an insurance run in the bottom of the 8th, and close out the win 8-5. So what was really good about this is the fact that the Cubs faced adversity. They allowed a lot of runs in 1 inning, and they didn't make that the game. And, we've seen it so many times where the Cubs have jumped out to substantial leads and then blown them in horrible situations. But here it's all about getting back in the game. If it's a 6th inning, find a way to get back in it. It was 1 run, and they're able to add, 2 more insurance runs on top of that. So I really liked the way that happened, and the Cubs were able to come away with the win today. They've been red hot since that horrible start that they had to spring training. So that, just a lot of really good things have been going on. As far as what went on in the lineup today, I'm going to try and move through it pretty fast because I don't know if any of you guys saw what I posted earlier, but there was clearly a lot of big news going on within the Cubs organization, and I want to spend a good amount of time talking about that. Dexter Fowler goes 2 for 4 with a run and an RBI. Fowler actually went out with a triple today. Ryan Sweeney walked. He appeared later in the game. Chris Coghlan went 1 for 4 with an RBI. His hit was a double. Junior Lake was 0 for 1 in his only plate appearance. He's hitting 300. Jorge Soler maintains his .333 average. He goes 1 for 3 with an RBI and a run. Anthony Rizzo goes 1 for 4 with a run. Mike Olt was 0 for 1, but he didn't strike out, and neither did Junior Lake for that matter. Chris Vallejo was 1 for 1. He came in later. Starlin Castro goes 2 for 4 with an RBI. He's raised his spring average up to .275. Tommy La Stella 2 for 4 with an RBI. He's hitting .349 this spring. He's really gotten hot. David Ross was 0 for 2. Wellington Castillo was 0 for 0, but he had 2 RBIs. Interesting how that happens. Kyle Hendricks at the plate goes 2 for 3 with 2 runs. That's pretty cool to see. And Jonathan Herrera went 3 for 4 with a run and RBI. So Coghlan and La Stella with doubles, Fowler with a triple. Coghlan, Herrera, La Stella, Fowler, Soler, Castro, and then Castillo's 2 RBIs. Rizzo and Sweeney picked up stolen bases. It was a decent start by Kyle Hendricks for the most part. He went 5 1/3. He did allow 5 runs on the 6th, so he struggled a little bit later on in the game, but he struck out 5. So I guess as far as that goes, you just got to see how that happens. It's a spring training game, and I'm sure Kyle Hendricks will be able to adjust to that moving forward. Phil Koch is still perfect in spring training. He actually got the win by pitching a third of an inning and getting a strikeout. Jason Mott pitched a perfect inning, which is very encouraging. Zach Roskup got the save, 3 strikeouts in the inning he pitched. So Roskup is really vying for that spot. And speaking of spots and speaking of rosters, there was plenty to talk about as today the Cubs cut Javier Baez, Addison Russell, and Chris Bryant from Major League camp. So the roster count is now at 36, so there still needs to be 11 players to be cut. But about this, I'm going to look at each one and see really what the situation is. With a guy like Javier Baez, the big thing to look at, and I mentioned this, was, he had a really rough game yesterday, and it's the fact that he's just simply not ready to really compete in the major leagues. We looked at Joe Maddon and him saying that he likes the defense at second base, but the thing here with Javier Baez is, he was hitting 173 going into today's game, and he didn't play today as he was sent down to AAA, and I think that that's the best thing to do. Give him time there, let him adjust more, because when he was called up to the major leagues last year, Baez was hitting 263 AAA, so it wasn't anything outrageous. Once you get Baez to start hitting in the 280, 290 range of AAA, then you know that he can start to really make the adjustment to major league pitching, just because it really hasn't happened yet. He's very prone to striking out, and he just needs a little more help down there, and I feel like he will be called up whenever the Cubs management sees it fit, and I think that won't take that long. I'd expect sometime in maybe later April, early May to see Javier Baez make that step and stay in the major leagues permanently. Addison Russell was not expected to make the big league team. This is something everybody knew because he's only played 2 games in his minor league career in AAA, but that's where he will start the season most likely. And I'd expect Addison Russell to be on the fast track. The way the Cubs were playing Chris Bryant in left was making a statement that they wanted Addison Russell up as soon as possible. So I don't think it will take him long to adjust to AAA. This guy's a real deal. He can end up being the best out of all of them, and I'd expect to see him in the major leagues sometime in May. As far as Chris Bryant goes, there are a lot of issues about this. The MLBPA heavily criticized the Cubs for making this decision, and that I don't understand, because it was the MLBPA that agreed to the collective bargaining agreement that set this service time rule, so they have no right to complain to the Chicago Cubs regarding this decision. It's a decision that I expected. I knew that Theo Epstein was looking towards the future, and knowing his history of not putting a prospect who's never debuted before in the opening day roster, I assumed that this would happen to Chris Bryant. It probably doesn't make Chris Bryant happy. He wants to be on the opening day roster. He understands this. But in the grand scheme of things, we have to understand as fans that 9 games to start the 2015 season versus a full year of Chris Bryant in his prime, that's something that we have to consider. I'm expecting that once Chris Bryant gets called up midway through April, that we're not even going to remember or really think about this whole ordeal going on. Personally, and I've expressed this several times, I think Chris Bryant should be on the opening day roster. I think that it would have been nice for Theo Epstein to stiff-arm Scott Boras and say, you know what, you're talking about Chris Bryant, all over the media. You shouldn't do that. You're not talking to me about what I'm going to make the decision for. Theo Epstein did not like how Scott Boras handled the situation. Chris Bryant handled the situation very well, and Chris Bryant probably does not want to play AAA where he's clearly better than the competition that's there. I would think that Chris Bryant should be in the opening day roster because of the immediate impact that he would have on the team. He's one of those guys that can impact the team in 9 games. But because he's not there, it's up to the Cubs, it's up to everybody else to be able to, kind of pick up the slack that's not there and be able to make it up and find a way to be a successful team for those 9 games, get out of the gate hot. 3 of them are against Colorado, so that won't be that bad. But that opening series against St. Louis is going to be very important. So to be able to get that hot start out of the gate, it's expected of the Cubs to be able to find a way to maybe take two out of those 3 games, or maybe even sweep them, and show that they are still a very competitive team even without Chris Bryant. Other than that, I wouldn't really be that mad about what happened today as far as him being sent down. Expect him to be called up after those first 12 days. So April 17th would be the magic day that we're looking at. And then we get to see what Chris Bryant really can do. But that's all I have for you today, Cubs fans. I'm running a bit long with today's video because of all the things with the roster. But the 25-man roster should be coming out by the end of this week, and then we can discuss that when that happens. But that's all I have for today. Keep your hope from Clark and Addison, because we are 6 days from opening night at Wrigley Field, and I'm super excited about it. But that is all I have, so I will see you guys tomorrow. Make sure to like the page and subscribe on YouTube if you haven't already. And we're just 6 days away, so opening night is fastly approaching. That's all I have for today. Good night.